Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 9 Frames podcast. This is episode 30. It is Friday, September 29th, 2023. It is our final episode of the regular season for 2023. I am Bill Whalen.
And I'm Mike Whalen.
Be sure to catch us on YouTube at 9 Frames Podcast. We're on Spotify at 9 Frames. X, we're on there at 9 Frames Pod, and we're on playergm.com. Honestly, the last little week frame had some pretty interesting stories going into it, so we'll cover those right now and set you up for the final weekend of the 2023 regular season. Starting it off, the Orioles win 100 games with a 2-0 win on Thursday against Boston. Huge win there to get 100 games for, you know when the first time since?
I don't know when the last time they did it,
time.
but they've only done it 6 times in their franchise history now, and they said that they've been to the World Series 4 out of the last 5 times they've done it. So, a team that was projected to be in last place by pretty much everybody goes out and wins 100 ball games. And shout out to Brandon Hyde, who is now I think he's the first manager since Connie Mack to manage a team to a 100-loss season and then stick around long enough to manage them to a 100-win season.
Yeah, he's been here for the whole rebuild. Been a pretty tough rebuild there, half-decade.
Yeah.
But now they're back, and he gets to reap the rewards.
Yeah, they did the draft strategy rebuild where they take like half a decade to just stack the minor league system and then call them all up around the same time, and it certainly has worked out for them.
Yeah, the Orioles end up winning 100 games and the AL East for the first time since 2014, so that's another massive accomplishment for Brandon Hyde and the Orioles.
And they will be the 1 seed in the American League all the way through as well. That's
I was going to ask you, I don't think it's much of a question for me personally, but Brandon Hyde, is he manager of the year?
Oh, yeah, he has to be.
I think if he's not manager of the year, there is no point to that award.
I think maybe the only other one you could consider is Bruce Bochy, but no, it has to be Brandon Hyde.
No, yeah, Brandon Hyde, beginning to end, post to post, a phenomenal season. I'm giving him my vote for sure if I had one.
The top 3 will probably be like Brandon Hyde, Bruce Bochy, and maybe it's either going to be Cash or Baldelli. Maybe the guy from Toronto. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Fair enough, yeah. I think that
Montoya.
it should be pretty much unanimously Brandon Hyde, though. Going over to some not-so-great news, man. St. Louis finishes last in the NL Central for the first time since 1990.
Yeah, I wasn't even a thought in 1990, so that's pretty crazy to think about, man.
Yeah, something that does not happen. That organization is not used to losing like this. They are negative 103 run differential, so they're over the 100 mark. Really bad year for a great franchise.
Yeah, one of the worst years, I mean, literally the worst year that either of us have ever seen in our lives.
For sure.
And people 8 years older than us can say the same thing. I mean, the franchise is usually pretty good. I mean, the stat that they have is that they don't have back-to-back losing seasons since like the 50s. So
yeah.
I guess we'll see next year. If they have another losing season, that might snap too.
I've seen the fan base is pretty vocal online about the fact that they think they're going to be back next year, so I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
sure.
There's no reason to doubt a franchise like the Cardinals with how good they've been just historically, so, I mean, I don't doubt it.
Agreed. Speaking of good franchises, we're going to get into the action of the midweek frame here. Houston put up 4th in the 7th and 8th innings to win 8-3 in that rubber game against Seattle. So they take 2 out of 3. Pretty huge for them now.
Yeah, pretty bad loss for Seattle too because they're hanging on. I mean,
they are now a full game behind Houston for that last wild card spot trying to get in.
They were a game and a half after that game too.
Yeah, massive 4 games started last night against Texas, which we'll cover in this episode for sure. Sticking with that little frame. The Reds go down 4-0 to Cleveland by the 4th inning. They try to claw back. They muster 1 run in the 6th and 2 in the 8th. They end up losing 4-3 to not make up any ground when they have the chance to.
Yeah.
Disappointing for Cincinnati there. They're now a game and a half behind Miami for the last wild card spot, and I don't feel great about their chances.
Yeah, and Miami is in a really weird situation with that game being suspended in the top of the 9th because if they finish that game off, that makes it 2 games over the Reds, and they hold the tiebreaker, which would make it 3, so that would basically eliminate the Reds.
Yeah, the Marlins versus Mets game last night getting suspended in the 9th or the 8th inning with 4 outs to go something like that.
It was top 9,
So
2 outs, guy on first and second.
Miami will go to Pittsburgh for a 3-game set, and then we'll have to finish off that game on Monday.
Yeah, I wonder what time they're even going to do that.
Pretty wild to see. Pretty unheard of, actually. And the bad weather continues in New York, so... Toronto lost 6-0 Wednesday to the Yankees, and then won 6-0 Thursday, so all 3 of those games are shutouts for one team. Pretty wild. Disappointing to lose 2 out of 3 here if you're Toronto. They're now a game up on Houston for that second wildcard spot, and 2 games up on Seattle for the postseason spot, man.
Yeah, they have a chance today to clinch. We'll get into that a little bit later.
For
sure. It is pretty disappointing, but they're still fortunate enough to hold a game advantage over the Astros, and 2 games into the playoffs with 3 left. I mean, and the Rays are already locked into their spot, like I was saying last week, so they're probably not going to be going 100%.
Yeah, we'll see if the Rays get complacent and maybe the Blue Jays take advantage to get into the postseason there.
They only need a win out of the 3 games.
For
so,
sure.
I mean, you'd think that they'd be able to get 1 out of the 3. They did last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be fine, but like I said, the schedule kind of benefited them because the Orioles took care of business and locked up the AL East, so the Rays can't move anywhere.
Yeah, the way that it formulated for Toronto was like the teams playing each other. It was kind of hard for them not to make it as long as they didn't lose all of their games.
Yeah, exactly.
Dropping 2 out of 3 to the Yankees and not really losing any ground, so that kind of goes to show. Lastly, for the intro, I wanted to give farewell to 3 absolute legends of the game. Firstly, Terry Francona, the manager. He's 23 years into his career. Phenomenal career, multiple World Series.
Definitely.
Adam Wainwright, part of the 200 win club, one of 5 pitchers to ever do that.
Not ever.
Active, yeah. One of the 5 active pitchers to ever do that, excuse me. And then obviously Miguel Cabrera, the Triple Crown winner, and obviously first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
I think all 3 of these guys probably should be. Maybe Wainwright will take a bit more to get in.
I think Miggy better be unanimous, or else there's a problem.
Agreed. Yeah, and now we'll get into the big series coming up on this weekend as we look forward to the final weekend of the 2023 regular season. We're going to start this one off with some interleague ball as Houston visits Arizona for a 3-game set. Both teams aren't quite in yet. Arizona does have the chance to clinch tonight, so we'll see on that one. Arizona is 2 games up on Chicago to be in the postseason, and a game and a half up on Miami for that second wild card spot.
Yeah, they're in a little bit better of a position, but they could still, in a scenario, not make the playoffs. So they still got to take care of business at least 1 out of these 3 games.
Yeah, Arizona would have to lose out, and obviously other teams would have to be pretty successful on their last series of the game. So
I mean, the Cubs have a really tough draw, so we'll get into them a little bit later, but
for
still.
sure. Talking about their opponent, Houston is a game up after the 2 out of 3 taken from Seattle, and the Seattle win against Texas on Thursday that we'll get into later. They are 2 games up, or 2 games back of Texas for that AL West spot.
Yeah, and Seattle still remains alive in that American League West race, too. They just need to win the next 3.
In terms of the division, I think that's Texas's division to lose most definitely at this point. I mean, they have a 2-game lead, and there's only 3 games left in the year.
They need to take one of the 3.
Yeah, getting into this big interleague series on the weekend. Game 1 will be JP France, the Rook, who is having a phenomenal campaign. He's 11-6 on the year with a 3.83 ERA. Not for nothing, man. He had some outlier bad games, and he's only at a 3.83.
Yeah, he's kind of scuffled as of late. He was doing a lot better in the first half, and then around the trade deadline, he started to falter a little bit.
It's a good year to hang your hat on, for sure.
Yeah, for a rookie, of course.
He'll be facing off against the ace, Zach Gallen, who's 17-8 on the year, man. A lot of wins there with a 3.49 ERA. That game, I think, is going to be quite a pitcher's duel.
Yeah, definitely a big reason why the D-backs are in the position they are. Zach Gallen, he's been great for them. I mean, and you look at it, if you remember that trade for Jazz Chisholm, the Marlins gave up Gallen. They could really use Zach Gallen right now.
Very true, and meanwhile they're platooning Chisholm. He can't really hit lefties this year, so they could definitely use Gallen.
They could use the depth. I mean, the Marlins just don't have much depth at all, but Gallen has been fantastic for the D-backs. Yeah, I mean, ever since coming over in general. He's just had a nice start to his career, and the D-backs are going to look to him to do it again.
Most definitely. Game 2 on Saturday will be Justin Verlander, the legend, who's 12-8 on the year with a 3.32 ERA. He's really gotten his numbers down and had a solid year.
Really solid year for a 40-year-old.
Yeah, and he will be facing off with a TBD by the D-backs. This was Merle Kelly last time in the rotation, so I think based off if they clinch tonight, they will be making the decision for the final 2 games on if they rest people or not.
Yeah, we're going to see, throughout the episode that there's a lot of TBDs for pitching matchups, and that probably predominantly has to do with the fact that a lot of these teams are in the playoffs or are looking to be in the playoffs, and they need to set up their rotation for the series that start Tuesday.
I did the math on these 2 teams, so I have a pretty good idea on who's going to start. Basically, if they don't win the Gallon start and clinch, Merle Kelly will be starting against Verlander to try to clinch that day. And Game 3 is TBD versus TBD. Last time in the Houston rotation, that was Christian Javier's spot. So if they haven't clinched their spot in the playoffs by then, that'll be Javier trying to save their season against a TBD who was Zach Davies last time in the rotation.
He got DFA'd, though.
Oh, he did get DFA'd.
Yeah, he got DFA'd. So I think that Bryce Jarvis took his spot.
Okay, so that would be Bryce Jarvis's spot, or
maybe even Brandon Pfaadt or somebody like that would start.
So a lot of uncertainty with that 3rd game, but if Houston hasn't clinched their spot yet, it'll be Christian Javier versus a TBD for real. And Merle Kelly will be taking on Verlander in Game 2, I would bet, if they lose Game 1.
I think they'll probably just do that matchup anyway. They'll announce it regardless.
Yeah.
I
I
guess because if they do clinch, they'll just give Kelly a rest until it'd probably be Wednesday.
Yeah, it's hard to make the call, but I wanted to ask you, who do you like in this series?
It's tough because both teams' backs are against the wall, but I think Houston is going to pull it out. They're going to take 2 out of 3 because they need to get into the playoffs. They're the defending champs. Like, they got to get in.
I'm not going to disagree with you. That's the thing on this one. That's actually my exact takeaway from this, is I think Houston takes 2 out of 3, and I think that makes both of these teams make the postseason.
Yeah, I think, exactly, because the D-backs need a win most likely, and then if the Astros take 2 out of 3, I don't think there's anything, unless the Mariners sweep, but then I think that would make Texas miss.
Right.
Which would be crazy.
That would be very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that could happen from that Seattle end.
There's a lot of scenarios in general, even with the Blue Jays, because there's a couple scenarios where the Blue Jays don't make it and all 3 of them do.
Very true. It's going to be a turbulent weekend of baseball. I do like the 2 out of 3 for Houston in this series, and I think that both of those teams will be scraping their way into the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to move on over to the American League for another massive series that is going to be between the Rangers and Mariners. This one is in Seattle, and this one's a 4-gamer, so it begins on Thursday. And this is the last 4 games of the season, too, for these 2 teams. Both teams are not solidified in the postseason yet as of the beginning of the series, and they both definitely want to be there, and they both still have a chance for that American League West, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, the Mariners have been playing a lot of high-pressure series the last week and a half, and they haven't been fully breaking under the pressure. They've been cracking, but not breaking, so we got to see if they actually stand tall here.
They haven't been good in those games, to be honest. They got swept by the Rangers, and then they lost 2 of 3 to Houston, so coming into this, they've lost 5 of 6, and they sit 4 games behind Texas for the AL West, which is, if they sweep, they win. And a game and a half behind Houston for that final AL wildcard spot. The series would begin on Thursday, like I said, with Texas had a chance, if they won, to clinch their postseason spot. It wouldn't be the West yet, but it would be a postseason berth.
So each game is a chance to do that, right? Any win
Texas just needs a win.
Yeah, 1 win would get Texas in there.
Yeah. They just cannot get swept in a 4-game. They just can't.
Which would be brutal.
Yeah. It would be one of the worst ways to end your season. The first game was Jordan Montgomery, who's been absolutely fantastic, skyrocketing that free agent value this offseason. And he was taking on Logan Gilbert, who's been really good again for the Mariners.
Yeah, both have been really fun to watch this season. Montgomery specifically in the second half now that he joined Texas.
Both of these guys were really good in this game. They both gave their team a shot in the end, which is all you could really ask for out of a starter. Montgomery goes 6 innings, allows 5 hits, only 1 earned, 2 walks, and 5 Ks, so quality start. That's all. I mean, he's gotten a quality start almost every single time he goes out there for Texas.
If your starter can go 6 and give you up 1 run, I mean, that's perfect.
Absolutely. And Logan Gilbert goes 6 innings, allowing only 3 hits, 2 earned runs because he gave up a pair of solo shots, as I'll say in a minute. No walks and 5 Ks.
Yeah, this was clearly a tightrope game, especially for the starters. Just absolutely doing it out. Literally one swing of the bat could change this game, and it did.
Yep. Texas would get a homer from Leody Taveras, his 14th of the year in the 3rd inning, and would get one from Adolis Garcia, his 39th of the year in the 4th to go up.
Season, big man.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I mean, they got him for cash.
Yeah, filthy.
It's so crazy.
Great player.
Garcia's homer gives them a 2-0 lead. Jordan Montgomery's lone mistake would be a homer that he served up to J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez, his 32nd of the year in the bottom of the 4th. As soon as Garcia hits his 39th, he answers with his 32nd. And that cuts it to a 2-1 deficit.
Yeah, pretty wild to see. The only mistakes that the pitchers were making were ones that were going and leaving the yard.
Yep. Both bullpens were fantastic, honestly, until the bottom of the 9th inning, where Aroldis Chapman would come in and he just had control issues. Lost the zone from the first pitch. He gave up a couple singles and then he completely lost it. They pulled him in the 9th after not even getting an out. So he gave up 3 base runners, a couple singles, and he lost the zone, 4-pitch walk. Bases are loaded now, and he ends up getting charged with 2 earned runs as J.P. Crawford slashes a double over Evan Carter's head to walk it off 3-2 for the Mariners. His 35th double of the year, too, man. J.P. Crawford's been a dog for them.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal game, a really phenomenal 9th inning for the Mariners. They got to be on top of the world right now. This is really the story of the season for Chapman and that Rangers bullpen. They've just been really bad. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, I think they're going to probably consider Leclerc for the 5th or for the 9th from now on because Chapman just doesn't seem to be the high leverage closer that he used to be.
Yeah, that's going to be scary going into the postseason.
Definitely.
Now that they're almost surely in, all they need to do is win one of these games. If they do get in, man, it's going to get ugly in the late innings of postseason games. It's different there.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of uncertainty, you look toward the last 2 games of the series after Game 2, which is going to be Nate Eovaldi, Nasty Nate. He's 12-4 with a 3.26 ERA. He'll be taking on Brian Wu, who's 4-5 with a 4.39.
Yeah, it should be a fun game. I keep thinking about what kind of year Nate would have had if he didn't get hurt there in the middle.
He was up there in the Cy Young talks until he went down, and then he had a little bit of a rough start, or maybe it was a couple starts when he first came back off the IL, but he still has a 3.26 on the year. He's got double-digit wins, man. He's been a great signing for the Rangers for sure. He's stability that they need. Him and Jordan Montgomery are literally keeping them afloat right now.
Yeah, most definitely.
And as I was talking about with the uncertainty right now, Game 3 is a couple of TBDs from both the Rangers and the Mariners. We were just talking about how this was John Gray's spot in the rotation, and he was pulled with an injury, so who knows what they do there. And I'm not really even sure what the Mariners are doing, because they have Castillo and Kirby usually go after Gilbert. Like I was saying before,
It'll be dependent on the games.
I don't know why the Mariners aren't announcing because they're not in. Like, they have to use their starters and then worry about their postseason rotation. Like, the Rangers can worry about setting up for the postseason because they need a win. The Mariners need multiple wins. They need to win at least 2 out of the next 3 to have a chance.
So Castillo will be starting one of those 2 final games.
I think it'll probably be Castillo, and if they still don't have it locked up on Sunday, which is a couple of TBDs for both of them as well, I think Kirby will probably go for the Mariners if they need him to, and then I'm not really sure what the Rangers will do because that spot was an opener.
Yeah, that was a Bradford opener last time through the rotation. It's tough, too, because the Rangers need this game, or these games, pretty badly as well to try to shore up their AL West.
I mean, if they get to Sunday, right, and the Mariners won the first 3, what do the Rangers do? Because the Mariners are going to send George Kirby out there most likely, and then
they'd be lined up for an opener.
You can't have an opener go with your season on the line.
I'm not really sure what you do unless you could short rest
Montgomery maybe would have to go.
Nah, you can't go in game 1 and game 4. Of
I don't know who's gonna go.
I don't
maybe
know.
John Gray is just needs an extra day. I don't know.
Could be a very interesting end of the season and series there.
Yeah. So the good thing for the Mariners, they hold tiebreakers with pretty much every team they need to. So much like the Marlins. Can they squeeze in, man? It's the same thing as the Marlins. They're in a little bit worse position because they're a game out instead of a half game in. But do you think the Mariners can do it?
It's crazy how much one inning can change your perception of this, man, because if that 9th inning went well for the Rangers last night, man, Seattle's chances would not be good. They'd be 2 games out with 3 games left in the year.
If they lost last night, that might have actually ended their season.
So each game means so much for Seattle. I don't feel great on their chances to get in still.
Yeah, but I mean, they do have the rotation set up to get them there if they have to.
I think we're kind of looking at what the postseason's going to look like right now in the AL. Not going to lie.
We'll see. I mean, Seattle holding tiebreakers is definitely an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
We'll see.
I wouldn't be shocked if these teams end up splitting this series, which is going to be enough for the Rangers, but not enough for the Mariners, and it might just fall just slightly short, which will be so disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I still think the Mariners are going to do it. I think they fight too hard, and they're going to scratch and claw their way in.
Exciting stuff. We'll let you guys know on Monday if they made it or not.
We're going to keep it in the American League for another huge series for one team now, since the other team is already locked into their spot. The Blue Jays are hosting the Rays with a chance to clinch the postseason spot on Friday. They, much like the Rangers, just need a win to get in.
Yeah, 1 win to get in is huge. Tampa might get complacent in this series because obviously they're completely set in their spot.
I don't know if I would call it complacent, but they're not going to be going 100%.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
No, complacent means that they're going to get lazy and then they're going to lose. Like they're not going to get tripped up by not starting their people for 3 days.
They just might not be trying too hard. That's all.
The Blue Jays could also do that if they just take care of business today. Aaron Civale's on the mound for the Rays. He's 7-4 with a 3.43. He really hasn't been as great as they'd hoped he'd be, but he's having a pretty good year still. He was in the 2s when he came over, so his ERA's gone up, but still a 3.43 is a great year.
I'd take a mid-3.
Yeah, he's a back end of the rotation guy for them. That's a great. I mean, they'll take it for sure.
For sure.
And Yusei Kikuchi's going for the Blue Jays in the potential postseason clincher. He's 10-6 with a 3.82. He's been pretty good for them, honestly.
Definitely. Toronto could really use this game so that they don't have to show their full cards to what could be their opponent in just a week.
Yeah, much like the end of the Rangers series, the Rangers and Mariners, there's a lot of TBDs for both teams on Saturday and Sunday. Probably because they have to see how the first game shakes out tonight. Because if the Blue Jays clinch, they're not going to send out Gausman and Berrios, who would be their next 2 in the rotation.
Right.
And there's almost no way that the Rays send out Eflin and Glasnow in the last 2 games of the season.
Yeah, now game 2...
Knowing they have 3 home games, Tuesday through Thursday, they're not doing that.
Eflin and Glasnow will definitely be taking game 2 and 3 off. I'm sure they'll be doing openers for those.
Yeah, they might even use somebody like it's going to be like Littell or Bradley or somebody like that to just mop up some innings.
Right. Toronto loses that first game, they get to go with their ace Kevin Gausman, and if they lose that second game and they desperately need the third game, the season lies on Jose Barrios' shoulders.
I was just saying it to you though, man. I think that if I was the Blue Jays, if I win tonight, I might just try to lose the next 2 games to the Rays because I'd rather not play the Rays in the first round, and then if they drop to the 6th seed, they would have to go to Minnesota instead of Tampa Bay.
Yeah, in terms of a confidence thing, you want to just kind of beat up on the Rays if you get the chance.
Absolutely. I don't think they're going to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying I would maybe just be like, hey, if we lose these 2 games, we got to go to Minnesota and play a team that has 12 less wins. It might not be the worst thing in the world, you know? The
big thing for them is that they win tonight so that they have all of the cards in their hand.
Yeah, exactly. If they lose tonight, you got to send out Gausman to try to get in. And then if you don't do it that game on Saturday, then you have to send Barrios.
Obviously,
at that point, it doesn't matter about Tuesday. You need to get in.
Most definitely, yeah.
The Rays, like we said, man, they got 97 wins. They're locked into that number one wild card spot. They're plus 10. They're chilling up there. They're not going to be sweating this series at all. They're looking forward to Tuesday already.
Yeah, Blue Jays did lose,
which right now would be them.
Right. Yeah, and the Blue Jays did lose 2 out of 3 to the Yankees. They salvaged the last game. Chris Bassett absolutely cooked the Yankees. They won 6-0, like we said. Chris Bassett goes 7 2/3 innings, so he takes it into the 8th, gives up 5 hits and 1 walk, gets 12 Ks, doesn't give up a single run, man.
He was absolutely phenomenal, and we were just saying on the Wednesday episode that the Blue Jays needed him to step up and do just this.
Yeah, and I think he will be a great arm for them in the postseason.
16 wins for Seabass this year, man. That's a hell of a year for them.
He'll be a really steady arm for them in the postseason if they can make it, which I do think they will.
I think he finishes his year going 16-8 with I think it's a 3.60. Yeah, 3.60 ERA. I mean,
really good year.
He had a phenomenal season for them.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on that first game tonight, and obviously that'll dictate how the rest of the series goes between Toronto and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is that I think I'm rooting for the Blue Jays. I want to see them play in October.
I think they'll be getting in one way or another, just with how all these teams' schedules pan out.
I want to see Gosman shove in October. I want to see Barrios. I want to see Vladdy, Bichette. Let's get those guys in there and let them show.
Agreed. And lastly, for the regular season, we are going to cover Chicago and Milwaukee, man. Chicago visiting Milwaukee for a 3-game set after a rough sweep by Atlanta to put them a half game back of Miami for that last wild card spot.
Yeah, man, the Cubs completely squandered that series. They had leads late in the first 2 games, and they blew it both times. Some costly errors from the Cubs. Real ugly stuff, man. They had the best team in the league pinned against the wall 2 times, and they choked.
It's really a series that Chicago could have taken all 3 games of. They lose the first one 7-6. Obviously, we talked about that on Wednesday's episode, obviously.
The Suzuki era.
Really brain fart moment. 6-5 in that second game, and then 5-3 in the third game. So really close games, but not one win. Can they finish these must-win games versus the first-place Milwaukee Brewers to end the year? Just like the Rays, man, Milwaukee's set in their spot. They can't do anything. They can't really move. So they seem to be kind of resting up this series for sure.
And that very well may benefit the Cubbies.
Mm-hmm. It'll be all up to the bats on if they can hit the less established pitchers of the Brewers.
I think it's almost like impossible for them to get in if the Marlins just handle their business, though.
Yeah.
I don't think this series will matter much if Miami takes care.
Pittsburgh has been playing spoiler.
And Miami's got to be exhausted from the doubleheader, and
Definitely.
now they got to go to Pittsburgh, and they must have gotten there at, what, 4, 5, 6 in the morning?
Probably.
They got to play a game in 12 hours?
Yeah, they called that Met game at around midnight. So.
And then it's like a 7-hour drive unless they took a plane to Pittsburgh. They probably flew.
Yeah, they might have taken a quick charter down there.
They got to be tired, and then they have to go back on Monday to potentially lock it up if they don't, because, like we said, Miami holds all the tiebreakers.
So above all else, Chicago's got to handle their business and hope that Miami can't. Either that or even Arizona could fall out.
Yeah, they're playing a very tough team. I mean,
that team does need to win a game.
As long as you're not locked in as of this moment, man, you got a chance to not make it. So
and play like your season depends on it, because it does.
It quite literally does for all of these teams.
Game 1 is going to be Kyle Hendricks, the nice vet, 6-8 on the year with a 3.66 ERA versus Colin Rea, who is 6-6 with a 4.74. Obviously, not the usual start in this part of the rotation, but they're going to go with it because they need to rest their guys going to the post.
Oh, the Brewers should not start any of their big 3. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it should be Burns, Woodruff, Peralta. That's it.
It will be in some order for sure.
I think it should be that or those 3, and I mean, good luck, honestly. Like the Brewers could be a real big problem, man. 90-69 is a great season.
Mm-hmm. Game 1 of this series, a favorable matchup for the Cubs, so they got to get a big win there. Game 2 will be the new starter, Jordan Wicks. He is 4-1 on the year with a 3 ERA versus a TBD. I think it's a pretty obvious opener for Milwaukee.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say real quick, man, shout out to Craig Counsell. He's been one of the most underrated and just good managers in
Yeah.
baseball for a decent amount of time now since showing up in Milwaukee, man.
This one's a really good season for him.
Yeah, he's been taking care of business there. He's got multiple playoff appearances, and now they're back on top of the division, and they look to make some noise.
And the game 3 will be, man, if this is where Chicago plays for their season, it will be the ace, Justin Steele. 16-5 on the year with a 3.06 ERA versus Adrian Hauser, who is 9-5 with a 4.52. Obviously, Milwaukee's resting their usual starters.
Hauser's 7-5.
7-5. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, 7-5 with a 4.52 ERA. 4.32. That is. Milwaukee seems to be resting their pitchers as their spot is completely set, kind of like Toronto. Can Chicago take advantage of that, or is it too late for them?
Like I just said, man, it might be too late because of that Braves series and how Miami is looking like they're going to take 2 out of 3 from the Mets, depending on how that Monday 4-inning or 4-out game goes. If they win that game on Monday, they would have a game lead on the Cubs in the standings, and they have the tiebreaker, so it's 2 games with 3 games left. It might be a little bit too late for the Cubs.
It might be too late for the Cubs for sure.
Those 2 games where they blew it real late to the Braves might have dug them too deep.
And not for nothing, we could be talking on Monday about how they swept the Brewers here, and Miami lost 2 out of 3 to Pittsburgh. This is baseball.
We could, and honestly, this is the one thing where I see where people are saying, like, the third wild card is a little bit ridiculous because a team with 82 wins is in a playoff spot with 3 games left. They probably shouldn't be.
The NL is top heavy this year, so that's how it's played out, yeah.
But yeah, because if you look at the American League, it's 87, 80. Like, it's going to be a bunch of nearly 90-win teams.
Definitely.
But 82 wins for a playoff team is a bit low. But hey, if they can get in, you never know, man. You could make noise.
Pretty crazy, too. Miami's sitting at negative 58 run differential, while Chicago's at plus 97, so very different teams this year.
The thing about the Marlins is, like, even if they get in, like, who's starting these games? Braxton Garrett, Jesus,
Luzardo,
and then who? Johnny Cueto? Like, come on.
Maybe, yeah.
That's not going to work.
No, yeah, they're going to be missing Sandy big time in the postseason if they make it.
They're missing Sandy. They're missing Trevor Rogers. I mean, they're missing guys that they absolutely need right now. And I think it's because they didn't think they would be in this position.
Yeah.
And they didn't plan for it with depth, which is on them.
We're going to have to keep an eye on Chicago and see if they can push their way into that last spot. We'll have to see if it's too late.
I think it's going to be a toss-up between Miami and Chicago, and it comes down to if Miami takes care of business. But if not, I mean, the Cubs may be benefited by the Crew just already being locked up in their position.
It's tough because I think the Cubs can make more noise in the post.
I just really don't know if either team is going to make that much noise, but I agree with you. The Cubs do have a better rotation / bullpen, which is ultimately what leads to playoff success.
Yep, the postseason's waiting. Someone's got to claim that spot.
3 days left.
Thank you to everybody for watching and listening to all of the episodes we have made so far in our coverage of the regular season 2023. This has been the 9 Frames Podcast. This has been episode 30 on Friday, September 29th, 2023. I've been Bill Whalen.
And I've been Mike Whalen.
You can catch us on YouTube, as always, at 9 Frames Podcast. Spotify, we're on there at 9 Frames. X is at 9 Frames Pod, and we're on playergm.com.
And how fitting is it that our 10th week of doing this ends with the postseason being on the horizon?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to cover that for you guys. It's been a lot of fun covering the regular season so far, and I look forward to next year even.
Yeah, 10 weeks of regular season, and week 11 kicks off the postseason, the most exciting time of the year.
Yeah, so be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube. Please follow us on X and give those tweets likes, and honestly press the bell notification if you want to know whenever we go live with a new video.
Playoff baseball.
Enjoy your weekend.